Have you ever looked around after your so-called spiritual awakening and thought to yourself, why don't I feel like doing anything anymore? You've cracked open the veil. You've seen the illusions. You've felt something higher, something real. And yet now all the drive, all the ambition, all the motivation that once pushed you, it's just gone. You're not lazy, you're not broken, but you feel hollow inside, like the fire that used to burn for success, achievement, validation has been extinguished. And you're standing in the ashes of your old self, wondering what's left. Let me tell you this. You are not alone. In fact, you're exactly where you're meant to be. Because the truth that nobody tells you is this: spiritual awakening doesn't add something to your life, it subtracts. It doesn't give you more motivation. It strips away all the false ones, the kind that came from fear, from ego, from needing to prove something, from needing to be someone. And when that falls away, it leaves a space, a stillness. And that space feels terrifying when you've spent your whole life being busy. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the silence after the awakening. Let's talk about why motivation fades and how to find something even deeper, something more powerful, something that doesn't just push you but pulls you. Because the loss of motivation after awakening isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new kind of fire. The first reason you feel no motivation after your spiritual awakening is because the game has changed. But no one gave you a new playbook. You used to run on rewards, trophies, likes, applause, promotions. You had a scoreboard in your head. You were chasing things because you thought they'd complete you. And then boom, awakening hits. And suddenly you see the matrix. You see the trap. You realize that no external thing can fill the internal void. You realize the game you've been playing your whole life was never really yours. And now you're standing there, aware, awake, but disoriented. Because you can't go back to the old game, but you don't know the rules of the new one. You don't even know what you're playing for anymore. This is the point where many people quit. They retreat. They think they've lost their edge. But here's what they don't realize. This moment is sacred. This space between who you were and who you're becoming is where your real self is born. The second reason you feel no motivation is because your old identity, your old self, was built on efforting, constant doing, constant striving. If I just do more, achieve more, maybe then I'll be enough. But spiritual awakening teaches you to sit, to feel, to let life move through you rather than trying to control it. And so motivation, as you knew it, dies because it was rooted in control. And now control has been exposed as an illusion. But that doesn't mean action ends. It just changes form. It becomes aligned, not forced. Inspired, not desperate. Gentle, not frantic. You don't lose the ability to act. You gain the ability to act from a deeper place. Let me give you an example. There was a man I coached once, a high-level executive. He'd made millions, built companies, traveled the world. But then he had a breakdown that led to a breakthrough. He saw past the illusion. He woke up. And suddenly, he couldn't get out of bed, couldn't answer emails, couldn't find a reason to keep pushing. He said, I feel like I've died. And I told him, you have. The part of you that was powered by fear is gone, but the part of you powered by truth is being born. And it was. Over time, he found his rhythm again, but it came from listening, not forcing, from inner guidance, not outer expectations. And now he still builds things, but not to impress anyone. He creates because it's in his soul to create, not because he's trying to matter, but because he already does. And that brings me to the third reason why you feel no motivation. You've outgrown the lie that you have to do something to be something. The old paradigm says you're only as good as your output. That rest is laziness. That hustle equals worth. But awakening shatters that illusion. It shows you were worthy the whole time. You were enough, even in stillness, even in silence. And that can feel paralyzing at first, because if I don't have to prove anything, then what am I even doing here? But that's the wrong question. The question is, what wants to move through me now? Not because I have to, not because I need approval, but because my soul is calling. This is the invitation of awakening, not to quit life, but to live it from a different frequency, to act not out of pressure, but out of presence, to create not out of fear, but out of freedom, to serve not to gain, but to give. And here's what happens when you live this way. Something miraculous. A new kind of energy emerges. It's not manic. It's not scattered. It's not based on to-do lists and performance. It's calm, focused, unshakable. It's a current you can ride, not a mountain you have to climb. This is flow. This is alignment. This is divine motivation. But to reach it, you have to surrender the old ways. You have to be willing to sit in the void, to befriend the silence, to let go of needing to always know what's next. And I know that's hard, especially in a world that glorifies productivity and performance. But let me tell you this, the deepest work is often invisible. The real transformation doesn't happen in your schedule, it happens in your stillness. So if you're in the space right now where nothing excites you, where nothing feels urgent, where the world feels distant and slow, don't panic. You're not broken. You're being rewired. Your heart is healing. Your spirit is recalibrating. You're remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And from that place, when you move again, because you will move again, it will be different. It will be cleaner. It will be truer. It will be yours. So what can you do right now? Start by honoring the pause. Trust that even in your stillness, you are growing. Then ask better questions. Instead of how do I get motivated again, ask what's truly worth my energy now? Instead of why don't I feel like doing anything? Ask what feels aligned with who I am becoming? And finally, start small. Follow curiosity, follow peace, follow resonance. Maybe it's journaling, maybe it's walking in nature, maybe it's making tea and sitting with yourself for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be real. Because you're not here to chase life. You're here to receive it, to live it, to trust that you're exactly where you need to be, even if it looks like standing still. And maybe, just maybe, this moment of low motivation isn't your weakness, it's your initiation into a life where you don't just do things to be seen, but where you become someone worth following, not because you tried, but because you finally stopped trying so hard. The spark will return, but it will be a different kind of spark. Quieter, stronger, wiser. So breathe, trust. And when the call returns, and it will, you'll be ready to rise. Not as the person you were, but as the person you were always meant to become. And maybe the most profound realization is this. The loss of motivation isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something deeper is awakening inside you. Something that doesn't need hype or hustle to act. You've spent your whole life being conditioned to think motivation is some fiery, relentless drive. That it should roar like a lion every morning. That it should drag you out of bed and shove you through the day. But real purpose doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hums beneath the surface until the noise clears and you can finally hear it. You see, after a spiritual awakening, the illusion that you have to earn your worth disappears. The illusion that you need to win, conquer, or accumulate in order to be someone collapses. And that illusion, while once motivating, was also exhausting. You were running a race that never ended, a treadmill of expectations, a ladder with no top. And so when it ends, there's this silence. And silence can feel like absence, but it's not. It's space, room for something new, something authentic. I want to ask you something. When was the last time you did something not for applause, not for profit, not even for progress, but purely because it felt like your soul lit up? Most of us have no idea. We've forgotten how to listen to the whisper. We've been so busy chasing someone else's idea of success that we don't even know what joy feels like anymore unless it's tied to achievement. But here's the shift. After awakening, you're no longer chasing goals. You're discovering alignment. You don't want to grind anymore because grinding is what you did to escape yourself. Now you've met yourself. And that self, the true self, it doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to permission. It responds to truth. It responds to presence. And yes, this new way of being is messy. It doesn't follow the same productivity charts. It doesn't win at hustle culture, but it does give you something hustle never could: peace. But I know peace can feel unfamiliar, especially when you were raised in chaos, when your worth was tied to your work, when your identity was built on the backs of accomplishments. But peace is not nothing. It is not emptiness. It is clarity. And when clarity arrives, the need to chase evaporates. And in its place is a deep knowing that you are already enough, that your existence is not up for negotiation, that you're not behind, that you're not failing. You're unfolding, and unfolding is not always loud or flashy. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like a pause, like a retreat. But nature rests before it blooms. The seed sleeps underground before it sprouts. The moon goes dark before it shines full again. You are not unmotivated. You are becoming. And part of becoming means allowing the old fire to die so that a new flame can rise. One that isn't fueled by desperation, but by devotion. Not urgency, but love. Let me tell you about a woman I knew. She was a creative powerhouse before her awakening, running on caffeine and chaos. Her life looked amazing on the outside. Constant output, constant applause. But inside she was brittle. Then she hit a wall. A massive, soul-shaking awakening that unraveled everything. She couldn't create, couldn't work. She said, "I feel like I've lost my magic." But the truth is, she hadn't lost her magic. She had lost the mask that produced for performance. And after months of stillness, of crying in the bath, of journaling without answers, something began to return. But it was slower, deeper. She started writing again, not for likes, not for followers, but for herself. She created not to be seen, but because it healed her. Her work changed, her energy changed, her life changed, and her fire came back. But now it burned steady, not frantic. That's what's waiting for you. A motivation that's not external but internal. Not about proving but expressing. Not about climbing but flowing. But it starts with one courageous decision to stop resisting the void. The void isn't your enemy. It's the womb. It's where the old you dies and the new you is born. It's where ego steps aside and soul steps forward. It's where noise dissolves into knowing. And I get it. That space is scary. There's no roadmap, no benchmarks, no applause. But there's also no pretending, no performing, no pressure. Just you and your breath and your truth. This is your moment to stop running, to stop reaching, to start receiving. Because life doesn't just want your hustle, it wants your presence. It doesn't want what you do, it wants who you are. So if you're tired of trying to feel motivated again, maybe the answer isn't trying harder. Maybe it's surrendering deeper. Let go of the stories that say you're lazy. Let go of the voices that say you're behind. Let go of the lie that says if you're not producing, you're not worthy. And in the space that remains, ask yourself, what feels honest now? Even if it's small. Even if it's quiet. Even if no one claps. That's where real power lives. Because you don't need more motivation. You need more authenticity. You don't need to wake up earlier. You need to wake up truer. You don't need to grind until it's yours. You need to listen until it finds you. And it will find you. That spark, it's still there, buried under years of performance and pressure, but it's there. It's the voice that says, what if I don't need to prove anything? It's the nudge that says, maybe this rest is sacred. It's the quiet knowing that says, my value is not earned, it is. And when you begin to live from that place, your actions will return, but they'll come from love, from clarity, from alignment. You'll build things, not to escape your pain, but to express your truth. You'll serve, not to feel important, but because your heart won't let you stay silent anymore. You'll move, not from panic, but from peace. And in that, you'll find not motivation, but momentum. Not hustle, but harmony. Not burnout, but brilliance. So if you feel like you've lost your edge, like you don't care anymore, like the fire went out, good. Let the old fire die. Let the ashes settle. And then when you're ready, strike a new match. But this time, light it with truth. Let it burn with intention. Let it guide you, not drive you. Because after awakening, the life you build will be different. It won't be a performance. It won't be a competition. It will be a devotion to what's real. To what's yours. To what never needed to be earned in the first place. That is the fire that never burns out. That is the fuel you've been waiting for. So breathe. Be still. And remember, you are not unmotivated. You are awakening to the only path worth walking. The one that starts with your soul. And so let's keep walking this path together. This strange, sacred path where everything familiar falls apart and you're left holding pieces you don't quite recognize anymore. The old dreams don't feel like yours. The old goals don't call you anymore. The race you were running, you've stepped off the track not because you're weak, not because you've quit, but because deep down something in you finally whispered, maybe this isn't the finish line I'm supposed to reach. That whisper, soft as it may be, is the beginning of real purpose. And real purpose often hides behind the loss of motivation. Why? Because when the fog of identity clears and the noise of the world fades, what's left is something raw, something honest. You see your truth, and truth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to impress. It simply is. But that stillness, that emptiness that follows awakening, it can feel brutal. You look around and see people chasing, grinding, building, celebrating wins, and you wonder, what's wrong with me? Why don't I care like I used to? Why doesn't the urgency light a fire under me anymore? Why do I feel flat? It's not because you failed, it's because you've evolved. Let me ask you something deep, something uncomfortable. What if the version of you that had so much motivation was actually operating from fear? What if you were trying to outrun unworthiness, to build an empire so people couldn't see your cracks? What if your ambition was a mask That's hard to admit. For years, I told myself I was driven, that I was born to build, to achieve, to chase excellence. But when everything I built came crumbling down after my own awakening, when all the accolades and applause no longer felt like nourishment, I realized something devastating and beautiful. I wasn't driven, I was escaping silence, escaping the fear that if I stopped, I would lose value. But the moment I stopped, I didn't die, I didn't disappear, I didn't dissolve, I discovered. I found stillness, and in it, I heard my soul for the first time in years. Not my ego, not the voice that wanted attention, but the deeper voice, the steady one, the timeless one. It didn't push, it pulled. That pull, that quiet gravitational tug towards something real is your new compass. And this is the first major truth we need to embrace. After spiritual awakening, motivation must evolve from pressure to presence. Before awakening, you do because you must. You do because you're terrified of what happens if you don't. You do because the world told you that your value is tied to your productivity. After awakening, you do because you feel it, because it flows, because your actions arise from alignment, not obligation. You're no longer driven by deadlines, you're drawn by destiny. And yes, that sounds poetic, but it's also practical. When you move from pressure to presence, your work becomes deeper, your words become truer, your energy becomes magnetic, not manic. That shift can't be faked, it's felt. But then comes the second truth. You must let go of linearity. Most of our lives are measured by straight lines. Education, career, marriage, promotions, kids, retirement, step by step, box by box. But awakening shatters that structure. Suddenly you feel like you're floating. No clear path, no next step, just space. And it terrifies you. Because we were never taught how to live in non-linear time. We were never taught that healing doesn't follow a calendar, that breakthroughs don't arrive on schedule. That becoming is more like a spiral than a ladder. But here's the gift of that spiral. Every time you return to the same lesson, the same place, the same emotion, you return with new eyes, new insight, new capacity, and slowly, gently, the pieces begin to click. Not all at once, not with fireworks, but with quiet certainty. You begin to see patterns, you begin to trust the flow, you stop asking what's next and start asking what's now. And that's where the third truth comes alive. You must redefine progress. Progress after awakening is not about milestones. It's not about checking off goals. It's about congruence. It's about how closely your outer life matches your inner truth. Are you speaking honestly? Are you honoring your energy? Are you acting from love or fear? That's your new yardstick. And sometimes progress looks like resting. Sometimes it looks like walking away from a six-figure job because it's killing your spirit. Sometimes it looks like spending an entire week not producing, but simply being. That's not laziness, that's deep work, that's realignment, that's rewilding. Because you can't carry the old rules into a new reality. You can't chase the same rewards when your soul is craving something sacred. You can't perform when your spirit wants to express. This is why you feel unmotivated. Not because you're lazy, not because you've lost your way, but because you're being asked to rewrite the map. And rewriting the map takes courage. It takes faith. Because for a while you'll feel like a beginner again. Like a blank slate, and that is terrifying. But it's also liberating, because from that blankness, you get to choose again. You get to ask the questions that matter. What do I love? What makes me feel alive? What would I still do even if no one watched? Even if I never made money? Even if I failed? And those questions, those soul-level inquiries, will lead you to the most powerful kind of motivation, devotional motivation. Not transactional, not external, but devotional. It's what monks feel when they rise at 4 a.m. to pray, not because they must, but because their spirit longs to connect. It's what artists feel when they create in silence, for no audience, just truth. It's what healers feel when they serve, not to fix, but to love. That is the motivation you're seeking. Not fire, but faith. Not push, but pull. And yes, it's subtler, yes, it's quieter, but it's also unshakable. When the world gets loud again, and it will, when it tries to seduce you back into the hustle, back into the chase, back into proving, pause. And remember this, you don't need to return to the grind to feel alive. You don't need to reattach to your old ambition to matter. You are not a machine. You are a miracle. And your existence is not defined by your productivity. It's defined by your presence. You're here to embody truth, not to exhaust yourself chasing illusions. So the next time someone asks you, what are you doing with your life? You can say, I'm listening, I'm realigning, I'm becoming. And if they don't understand, that's okay. Not everyone will, but your soul will. And in that sacred knowing, you'll find the kind of motivation the world can't steal. The kind that whispers in the morning, you're exactly where you need to be. The kind that reminds you, you don't have to chase your worth. The kind that invites you, create, serve, speak, not because you must, but because you are. And in that space you will rise again, not as the person you were, but as the one you were always becoming. This is your path now. This is your invitation, not to run harder, but to root deeper, not to hustle louder, but to hear clearer, not to prove anything, but to be everything you already are. You haven't lost motivation, you've just outgrown the lie, and now it's time to live the truth.